Everybody, and welcome to our third video in this course. So here you can see, if you play this animation, we made a very simple animation that this cube is going from the right to the left side, and now we are going to make it more complex, and we are going to talk a little bit more about keyframes and all the tools in the timeline. So first I'm going to press N, and now I will be able to see all the location, rotation, scale as well. So here you can see that we have 240 frame, and now, for example, what we can do also, for example, we can go and insert keyframe on the 60th frame. For example, let's move this cube up on the Z location. So let's say 5 meter is going to be fine, and now I'll press I for inserting location. And now, as you can see, our cube suddenly move up, and that's because the only keyframe that is active on the Z is going to be this keyframe here, which is 5 meter, and now we will need to fix it. So here I'm going to press 0, and here, as you can see, that now we have 3 different colors on the location on our first keyframe. So let me just show you what this means. So here you can see that we have keyframe on the X, and also we have keyframe on the Y, but this one is green, and that's because the only active keyframe on the Y is this 0 keyframe, and that keyframe is on the 60th frame. So here, if you go back, you can see that we have this keyframe on the Y. And now, as you can see, if you change it here, as I already mentioned, this means that we made changes on the keyframes, but we didn't make it keyframe. So we have changed it, but we need right now to insert keyframe on the Z as well. And as you can see here, we have also inserted keyframe on the Y. And right now we don't have any colors except yellow, which means that all keyframes are now set to Y. And now if you play this animation, you can see that Blender is calculating the in between frames to move our cube from Z up, and now it's moving on the left. And as you can see, we didn't replace our last keyframe. So if you want to delete keyframe, you can just select it here in timeline and press X and delete keyframes. Or you can also clean keyframes and clean channels. So right now I'm going to delete keyframe, and now I'm going to select this first frame, and with the Shift and D I will move it all the way down, all the way until the last keyframe. And now you can see that our cube is moving and slowly returning to original position. And now, as you can see, Blender is calculating from this position to this position here. So let's say we want this cube to move a little bit up and to stay for a while on this position. So the simplest way to do it is by using Shift and D and drag it here, using the same keyframe on the location. Now it stays here, and after that is going on this keyframe here. And you can see that we, for example, if we want to keep those numbers 0 and 5 on the Y and Z, we'll need to do the same here. So we already have it on the Y, but we will need here to insert the same. And now you can see that we have the same height on the Z all the way until 120th frame, and now it's returning back to its original position. So now I'm going to talk a little bit more about those settings here on the timeline. So here under view, you can, for example, turn on show seconds, and now you can see seconds instead of keyframes. So here you can see that we have 10, which means 10 seconds. So here is our first second, and now, for example, can see that this is our first second of our animation, which means that this is 24 seconds, and basically this frame rate will tell you the number of seconds of your keyframe. So let's try and change it to 25, and here immediately you can see that we don't have now 1 second, and that's because we changed it to 25 seconds. So I'm going to return it back on our frame rate to be 24 seconds. I'm going to turn off it now, and here we can see all the different stuff that we need for our animation. We can have, for example, sync visible range or show markers and so on. And basically markers are just things that will help to stay organized on our animation. So for example, we can go on our first keyframe, and here we can add marker, and now we can go and rename marker, for example start, and here you can see that we have marker here, and we can also drag it with holding left mouse click and drag it through your timeline. And we can add second keyframe, for example here, add keyframe, and now we can go and rename it. For example, we can call this up keyframe, and those are just helping us to stay organized if we need it. For example, if we send this to second animator or somewhere else, so that's the easiest way to stay organized. Also, for example, we can go and delete markers, as you can see, and let's see what we have else. We can go and select marker, and here we can jump from next to previous markers. We can lock markers from being moved, and also we can move markers with a G and so on. So basically those are settings for the markers. Right now we don't need markers for this, because we are going to make some simple small animation. So right now I'm going, for example, let's delete all the keyframes for now. Let's select everything. By the way, you can go and press A, and immediately you will be able to select and deselect everything. So as you can see, if we don't have our cube active, we don't have any keyframes. So let me just show you. For example, I'm going to go and bring another cylinder. I will bring new cylinder to our scene, and here I'm going just to go and insert 2 keyframes on the cylinder. And now, as you can see, if we don't have any active meshes, we don't have any keyframes here on our timeline. But if we select our cylinder, we will have those 2, and now you can see that we can have a lot of keyframes on different meshes. So you just need to follow and be careful, and my advice is don't rush when you animating in Blender. You just need to slow it down and think about what you're aiming for and what you are doing. So right now I'm going to delete my cylinder, and now I will go back on our first keyframe, and here I'm going to press right click, and I will delete keyframes on the location. Actually, we can go and clear keyframes, so now we have only our cube. Also, for example, we can go and turn on our auto keying. So basically this option will allow us to have to immediately insert keyframes without pressing I or anything. But as you can see, for example, if I grab it, you can see that we have here auto keying on, which tell us that we have active keying on turned on. And for example, if I grab this cube and move it to the side, you can see that now immediately we have keyframes on the location, rotation and scale as well. And for example, if I rotate this cube and scale it, we immediately replace all the keyframes. So for example, we can go now and jump on the first keyframe, and for example we can go and scale it down, rotate it, and for example we can go on the 100th frame, move it to the side, rotate it as well. So now if you play this animation, you can see that moving up and going all the way and replacing all the keyframes on the all location, rotation and scale, and also it's changed also on the X, Y and Z. So you need to be careful when you use this option here. So let me just go and delete those, and here I'm going to go and clean all the keyframes for each, and right now I'm going to go and set it back all to scale to be 1 and rotation to be 0 and location as well. So right now, for example, we can go and switch to perspective view, and for example I want my cube to go from this position until here, and while it's going here I want to scale it a little bit. So first I'm going to press I to insert a location, and for this one we need only location and scale. And as you can see, we immediately have location and scale as well. So let me just clean and actually delete this keyframe. And now, for example, instead of finding location and rotation, we can just go and press I here and I here. So you just need to hover above and press I. And immediately you will have insert keyframes on those location and scale as well. So for example, on 100th frame I want my cube to go all the way here, and for example I want to change the scale to be 1.5. So instead of writing down for each of these channel 1.5, we can go and just hold left click, and here I'm going just to press 1.5 and immediately we will change the scale number on all channels here. So as you can see, we have orange, which means that we made change on keyframes but we didn't insert keyframe. So I'm going to press I on the scale and also on the location, and now if you play this animation you can see that our cube is slightly growing up while it's going forward. So for example, let's say we want this one to decrease, and by the way you can hold left click and drag through all these channels, and for example you can now move right and left and immediately you will able to scale it up and down. And by the way, you can hold shift if you want to have smoother controls on those. So as you can see here, we can go all the way to about here. Orange means that we made changes but we didn't insert keyframe. So now I will insert keyframe, and now you can see that our cube is growing up. And for example, if we want to go back on its original position, we just need to duplicate this frame, and for example we can go and move it all the way until last keyframe, and now it's going back again on its original position. So right now, as I already mentioned, you can go and select keyframe and grab it by pressing G, and for example this is the middle. So as I already mentioned, if you want to do calculation, you can do it here. So 240 divided with 2 is 120. So that's the easiest way how you can find the middle of your animation. And now, for example, we can go and change the rotation on this 120th frame, but for that, before that, I want to insert keyframe here on the rotation, and also here on the rotation as well on the last keyframe. And for this one, for example, we can go and switch it to, for example, we can go and write down 90, and here I'm going to press I, and now you can see the whole cube is rotating and moving and scaling all the way. Also, you can play with all of these settings. So for example, we can go and scale this cube on the Y, for example like this, and for example we can go and rotate it like this. We can move it also on the Z, and now I'm going to press I to insert keyframes on those, and you can see that now this cube is transforming. As you can see, very simple animation we can make with only just couple of keyframes. So now you can also, for example, one of the advice I can give you when you are animating, for example, if you are deleting the keyframes, for example, if right now I delete all these keyframes, you can see that now the origin and location, rotation and scale are staying the same on your active keyframe. So in order to have this left, for example, if you delete these keyframes, you will need to set the active keyframes on, for example, you can set active keyframes to be this keyframe, and now if you delete keyframes, let me see, we need to delete it here. As you can see, we have different menus when we are in 3D viewport, and different menus are when we are on timeline. So to delete keyframes we need to be here, or we can go and press right click, and here we can delete keyframes by clearing the single keyframes or deleting keyframes here. So right now, as I already mentioned, I want to clear keyframes, and now you can also have different approach. So for example, we can go and press I here for location, rotation and scale, move until 120th frame. Now we can go and press G, X and for example S and Y to scale it on the Y. We can go and slightly rotate it on the X. Let's go a little bit bigger. Here we can go and press location, rotation and scale, and I'm going to duplicate it, the first frame. And so those are basically very simple ways of animating in Blender. So you can decide on what you need. If you want to be more precise, you should always use transforms menus here by pressing N on your objects, or you can go and play with the view and inserting keyframes on those. So that's it about this video. Stay tuned and see you in the next one.